All right, so green on the left, notes on the right. Okay, yesterday we talked about what was, it was basically the perimeter of a circle around the outside of it, right? And we called that, the real name for that, the length around the outside was circumference, okay? However, I want to show you guys that today, even though we're still dealing with circles, we're talking about a different part of the circle. We're talking about the amount of space inside the circle. Okay? So the green part of the circle. We want to know how much space is in there. Now, when you talk about the perimeter, or in this case the circumference of a circle or any figure, you're talking about a one-dimensional measurement, meaning a straight line. How long is that line? Today, however, when we're talking about area, that being the inside of a figure, we're talking about usually a two-dimensional shape. All right, and when we talk about two-dimensional shapes, the way that you measure two-dimensional shapes is not with a ruler. You actually measure it basically with, I'll just draw a quick little picture to kind of give you a rough idea. You measure it with how many squares there are inside that circle. That is what area is. Okay? So when we talk about area of a circle today, this is what we're dealing with. Now, it is a little different than yesterday. You're going to find that the routine is the same as the routine when it comes to circumference, all right, of a circle, meaning when you deal with the steps. But there's going to be a couple little changes between yesterday and today, all right? So there's one vocab word thing, something that will pop up that you'll need to know what it is, and that word is semicircle. Everyone?
Semicircle.
So here's what your book says a semicircle is. It's half of a circle. Half of a circle. It says the formula for the area of a semicircle is area equals 1/2 pi r squared. We'll talk more about that in a bit. I'm going to actually, you can use that, but I'll show you a different way of doing it. Okay, which probably many of you guys will like, but either way works. All right, so in your little box there, go ahead and draw a half a circle. Now that, I know that if you take a look at that close, that's a little more than half a circle. For some reason, PowerPoint wouldn't let me make an exact half circle, but you know what a half circle looks like. Go ahead and just draw it really quickly inside of your box there. All right, so let's go ahead and you can put that away, grab your book, flip over to page 626. 626. Eyes up here when you're ready. Okay, on page 626, let's take a look at problem number 3. Now, the directions are very important, kind of like they were yesterday. The directions say, find the area of each circle, round to the nearest tenth, use 3.14 or 22/7 for pi. So here's what they tell us. They tell us in problem number 3, they say the diameter of a circle is 16m, of course, which is 16 meters. So, when you solve this problem, here's what you're going to do. It's asking us to find the area. Step 1, here's what it is. You're going to write down the formula. So, and guys, if you haven't realized yet, a formula is, it's basically, it's a helper. It's a a formula is like a helper that shows letters, all right, not completely variables, but these letters stand for something, and they're just basically, it works as a guide to help you get to the right answer. All right, so for example, today's being the area of a circle, the formula today is, to find the area of a circle, it is pi r squared. Pi r squared. And yes, we're not going to go over it in detail today, but back in the day in ancient Greece, they found a way that you can find the area of a circle by using a formula like this. Okay, so A obviously stands for area. In this case, area of a circle. We know that pi is always 3.14 or 22/7, and the radius, of course, is what r is. Okay. Now, here's what we do. Step 2, plug your numbers in. So the area doesn't have a number in this case, but we do know what pi is. It's 3.14. We'll use 3.14 for this problem. Now, put a little asterisk. We talked about this yesterday. Put a little asterisk by step 2, because this is where people make mistakes. Be very careful what you plug in. So many people will get in a rush and plug in just any old number they see in the problem. But be careful, because r stands for radius. The problem gives us the diameter. So remember, just a little review from yesterday. Center of a circle, okay? A radius is that. A diameter is that. It's twice as big as a radius. So if it gives you the diameter, this whole thing is 16, we're going to take half of that, and that's what I'm going to plug in. I'm going to plug in 8. The radius is 8. Now do not forget, a big part of this is the exponent of a 2. Now step 3 is I'm going to go ahead and simplify. Now when I simplify, be very careful. I see two things happening on this problem. I see this multiplied with that, they're right next to each other, but I also see an exponent, which is not 8 times 2. Okay, if they wanted 8 times 2, they would have just put 8 times 2 down here. This is an exponent. And if we look at that pink poster up there, that's been up there all year, right? The very first part of order of operations is do what's inside the parentheses. Well, in this case, there's nothing to do in the parentheses. But the very next one is dealing with the exponent. So, ladies and gentlemen, 2 goes with the parentheses, or what's in the parentheses. We are squaring 8. So remember, this isn't 8 times 2, it's 8 times 8, which is 64. I bring down my 3.14. I'm going to kind of go through my little arrow line there. And so, I continue to simplify. So I bring out my calculator, 3.14 times 64 equals, the area is 200.96, 296 hundredths. Now, be very careful. We'll call this step star. Some of the problems, remember, asks us to round. So we need to turn around and we take a look and reread the problems as are the directions. Find the area of each circle, round to the nearest tenth. This one does tell us to round. The nearest tenth is right there. If I look at its neighbor, the 6 makes the 9 go up to a 10. So if that was to go up to 10, instead of 2009, it would be, I'll rewrite it up here, 2010. But don't forget your decimal point, right? Ends up being 201. Now comes step 4. Now, step 1 and step 4 are realistically the only steps that are different from yesterday, right? Because step 1, even though step 1 is actually the same, right? It's just a different formula. Step 4 is also the same. We're gonna, after we round, we're gonna put our units on there. However, you have to be careful with this, okay? Because we're talking about area, okay? You have to remember area is dealing with the inside, and we measure it by using squares. So we have to show that in our answer. So instead of just putting 201, and the units were meters, instead of putting 201 meters, it is square meters. And that is a necessity, 201 square meters. And that is our final answer. Okay, guys, questions on that? All right. The square, yeah. Yeah. Remember, someone asked earlier when we were correcting homework about circumference, and but putting a square on that is wrong because you're not using squares to measure the circumference of a circle. You're using a straight line. You're measuring a straight line. But in this case, we're using square meters in this case. So that's why it has to be on there.
How again did you get 8 squared?
8 times 8?
Yeah, how'd you get that? No, like, where did that come from?
The radius is the 8. Because the diameter is 16, this whole thing is 16. That means that each half is 8 and 8, which, of course, a half is a radius. So that's why I plugged that in. Okay? All right. Here we go. Let me have you guys try one. Go ahead, go to your homework on page 627 and try out problem number 1. Try out problem number 1. All right, go. All right. Anyone need more time? Okay. Give you just a bit more time there.
There's another one too.
Okay. 30 seconds. Go ahead and turn to your neighbor and share. Go.
Okay, I got 452.2 centimeters squared.
No, because remember, I disagree with you because radius is 6 centimeters and 6 times 6 is 56. So I got 113 centimeters squared.
Okay, here we go. Let's take a look at problem number 1. All right, so number 1 had a drawn circle that looked kind of like this, like my little sketching here. And it showed this line was 6 centimeters. So if I set this up and I go through the steps, step 1, as I set up my formula, pi r squared. Step 2, plug the numbers in. Well, pi is 3.14. Be very careful with this part. Radius actually is what they gave us. It's actually 6. We don't have to split it in half or double it or anything else. They actually give it to us. So 6 squared. So when I simplify it, which is, of course, step 3, I do my exponent first. So 6 squared is 6 times 6, which is 36. And then I grab my calculator for this calculation. 3 and 1400ths times 36 equals, and I get 113 and 400ths. That's our area. Then step star, right, was to round it. And this is a same direction, so I'm going to round it to the nearest tenth, which gives us 113.0. And now I put my units on there. If I take a look, it's in centimeters, but don't forget, it's square centimeters. Square centimeters. And there we go. All right.
Since it's radius, you have times it by 2.
No, because remember, with today, the radius is what is in the formula. So you have to use the radius. You can't use the diameter. And then, yeah, it's not times 2. That's a square. That's an exponent. It's repeated multiplication. So 6 squared is the same as 6 times 6. It's 2 6's multiplied together. All right, guys. Other questions? All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the next problem. All right, so problem number 4 on page 626. So flip back to 626. All right, so it says Rondell draws the semicircle shown at the right. What's the area of the semicircle? Use 3.14 for pi. So that semicircle looks kind of like this. And if you take a look very closely, it's harder to tell in the book, but this one is colored like red. So that, and they show us the reason why that's colored red is that's what is 14 yards. Now, granted, when you solve this problem, I'm okay if you do this, you can use the formula that is in our vocabulary out of the book. Okay? I'm going to show you a different way that you can do it though, which is basically doing it the same way. Okay? And here is what I'm going to do. Okay? If we have a semicircle, here's what we're going to do. Step 1 is we're actually going to find the area of a full circle. That's what we're going to do. Meaning that I'm going to treat it originally like that is what we're finding the area to. Okay? Meaning that I just start off with area equals pi r squared. And now I'm going to plug in the numbers. Pi is 3.14. Radius is that 14 yards, what they give us for the semicircle. That's our radius. So it's 14 squared. So when I go to simplify this, 14 squared is 14 times 14, which equals 196. And then I bring down my 3.14 and I multiply those two together. So times 3.14, and I get the area is equal to 615 and 44 hundredths. Now, here's the issue. That is the answer, not rounded or have units on it, but we're not done with this problem here, so we don't need to worry about that. That's the answer to the area of this full circle, but that's not what they're asking. They want us to know what's the area of only this part. Well, guys, that's half of that. So to find half of a number, what do we usually do?
Divide.
Yeah, so step 2 is we're going to find the area of a semicircle. And so all you're doing in your notes, you can just put divided by 2. So we have 615 and 44 hundredths divided by 2. And so if I punch this in, it's already in, right? Divide this by 2 equals 307.72. Now again, step star, see if we have to round. If I reread it, it actually doesn't tell us to round. So we're actually okay leaving it like that. However, we do need to do step 3, and that is at the very end we need to put our units on. So it's in yards, and don't forget this is still area, so it is square yards. 307 and 7200ths square yards. Questions? Oh, that's yeah. That's to numbers 1, 2, and 3, not the word problems. But yeah, I see how that can be confusing. All right, guys. Any other questions? All right. Here's the problem I want you guys to try. Back onto your homework. Try out problem number 11. Problem number 11. All right. Go. Okay, anyone still needing more time on that? All right, I'll check with you in about 20 to 30 more seconds. Again, those of you that are done, go ahead and continue on the problems like the ones we just did. Okay, go ahead, turn to your neighbor and share your answer. Go.
You just need to do
You can go first.
I'm not done. I stopped.
Okay. Okay, I got 160.2 yards.
160.
I'm not sure if it's right.
Hold up. Oh, oops, yeah. Sorry. I did 10.2 times 2. No.
All right, so on problem number 11, same directions, round to the nearest tenth, find the area of the semicircle, use 3.14 for pi. The semicircle this time is, they just give you a half a circle that is looking like that. But if you look carefully, that's why I pointed it out the last time, okay, it actually has this whole side here shaded. And they show you that it's 20.4 yards. So when I go to solve it, here we go. Area of the full circle first. So I'm going to go ahead and approach it as if I'm going to find the area of the whole circle. So area equals pi r squared. So when I plug it in, pi is 3.14. Plug in the radius, it is not 20.4. That is the diameter. So you have to be very aware when you solve these. So 20.4 is, you can use a calculator to find it out, but it is half of it is 10.2 squared. So I go ahead and solve it using my calculator. I simplify 10.2 times 10.2 equals, and I get 104 and 400ths. Now I bring down my 3.14 and I multiply those two together, times 3.14 equals, and I get this pretty large number, 326.6856. Now that is step one. However, step two, right? We just found the area of the circle. To find the area of half of that, you just take that and divide by 2. Now the nice part about a calculator is just leave that in here and just hit the division of 2 sign, or buttons, and I get 163.3428. And now it does say round to the nearest tenth. Nearest tenth is right there. The 4 makes a 3 stay the same. So I get 163 and 3/10. Now do not forget your units, and that is yards squared, or square yards. Okay? Definitely calculator type of problem, guys.
How did you get 10.2?
Split that in half, because this is the diameter and I needed to put in the radius.
So you just divide by 2 and then times by 2?
I didn't times by 2.
And it has the 2.
That's not times by 2. Again, what we talked about up here. This I took and put 10.2 times 10.2, because it's an exponent.
Yeah, I know that. How come you did it by 20.4? Why did you divide this 20.4?
Because again, this is the diameter, and the formula guides us to put in the radius.
I thought that's why you divide it by 2 at the end.
Nope. This 2 right here. This here is finding the area of the whole thing. But we didn't need the area of the whole thing. We only needed the area of this half right here. So once I found the area of the whole thing, I have to divide it in half. Okay, guys, other questions? Okay, I do have one more to go over with you guys. One more type of problem. So let's go ahead and look at page 120, or sorry, 627. Let's take a look at problem number 7. Okay, now on number 7 it says, let's close read this by the way. It says, refer to the pet problems at the beginning of this lesson. Find the area to the nearest of grass that Adrian's dog run in if the leash is 9 feet long. So if you just flip to page 620, no, what was it? 623. Okay? Listen, 623 is not going to help you out. There's not this one wonderful, beautiful story. What they really want you to take a look at on 623 is just the diagram. All right? They actually, it's not really a diagram. It's like a little cartoon picture. And it kind of shows you the dog and his leash, right? And it's one of those leashes that are staked to the ground. So what it really is it's a stake in the middle, and this dog is stretching the leash out and pretty much running in a circle. And the leash is, in this particular problem, they said, is 9 feet long. Now, what I just did was step 1. And even though I kind of talked that, it still took me only like probably less than 30 seconds. But draw a diagram. Diagrams, you can look at them if you draw that diagram, and it will help you tremendously on some problems. Okay? So, from here, step 2 is find the area. In this case, it's a full circle. You want to know all this grassy area here that the dog can play in. So, the area is pi r squared. So, when I plug the numbers in, I have 3.14 for pi. The radius is the leash. It's right there. We don't have to double it or half it or anything else. So the radius I'm plugging in is 9. And don't forget your square. So when I go to simplify this, do my exponent first, which is 9 squared, which is 9 times 9. That gives me 81. And from here, 81 times 3.14 equals 254 and 3400ths. Of course, guys, step star, does it say to round it?
Yes.
In the story to the nearest tenth? So the 4 makes a 3, just stay the same. So we have 254 and 3/10. And step 3 is make sure you put your units on. In this case, it's in feet. So the dog has 254 and 3/10 square feet to play in.
That's a lot.
So, how come you didn't? Oh, okay. Since this is the blue circle, then you don't have to divide by 2.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Other questions? All right, guys. Area of a circle.